Any other members wishing to speak to the bill? The honourable member from Calgary-Alba.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, honourable colleagues. Rising to speak to Bill 33. I just want to start on reflecting on the process that got us to this point. The process that the Electoral Boundaries Commission went through. The two-stage process where there was a series of public hearings, at the very least 8, if I'm not mistaken, an online submission process where Albertans could weigh in, a draft set of boundaries that were distributed. Albertans then had an opportunity to weigh in on that, another series of hearings and a tour around the province, rural and urban. Another opportunity to provide input in person and online, and ultimately the report was finalized. And I just want to remind the House, I'm sure you all know this, but remind the House that the Commission is made up of 2 members appointed by the government, 2 members appointed by the official opposition, chaired by a provincial court judge, and so. The process itself, I think, should be respected, and we need to understand that the process is at least ostensibly ought to be a nonpartisan process. Now, I acknowledge that, but I will say that yes, we have 2 members appointed by the government, but 2 members appointed by the official opposition. Now, it's worth noting that one of the members appointed by the official opposition did write a minority report, differing from the perspective of the majority, and she was certainly within her rights to do so. And I think she made some very, very important points in that minority report, points that I think rural Alberta reflected in their submissions, and members here in this House on both government and opposition side have made some points, both through their voting on the government motion 34 and also what we've heard in debate about the feelings of rural Alberta as it relates to electoral boundaries. What it comes down to is how do we balance the need to have representation by population in dense urban areas and areas that are not densely populated but have a large geographic area. And then how do we ensure that the Assembly represents a reasonable balance of what our province looks like? In the end, given that it was such a thorough process, and I acknowledge the very legitimate concerns that rural Albertans have with the new electoral boundaries, in the end I will support Bill 33, primarily because the process that the Commission went through. What I will say, though, and I know this is not an issue specific to what we can address in the House with this particular bill, it is something perhaps Member Services, however, could address, and that is, are there other ways of ensuring that rural Alberta has the representation they need through constituency offices? Is there an opportunity, and I suggest there certainly is an opportunity, and something we should look very closely at on Member Services, to adjust the formula to ensure that rural Alberta, especially the larger and the new larger constituencies, have more resources available to them to have more constituency offices or offices open longer. Offices, perhaps we could have a formula that relates to any municipality above a certain size is allocated a constituency office or a partial constituency office. That doesn't change the fact that it's very difficult for MLAs that represent large rural constituencies to actually physically get around that constituency, to be in the communities when and where their constituents want them to be. It is a different situation than the situation I face in inner-city urban constituency. It just is. And it is tremendously challenging. I have great empathy for MLAs who have to cover such tremendous geographic distances. However, in the 21st century, we have new communication technologies that allow for us to be engaged with our constituents in a different way than we were able to even a decade ago. So I know that doesn't change the fact that it doesn't replace face-to-face. It's not as good, but it is an opportunity to at least stay engaged with what your constituents are talking about. The other way that's a bit of a halfway between a straight online interaction and a person face-to-face with the MLA is by having a constituency office available to those residents and expanding those out. So I would absolutely be supportive of 2 or 3 constituency offices for some of the larger rural constituencies. It doesn't replace the one-on-one that you would get with the MLA, but it's a halfway point. It's a start. So in the end, I think that this House and all members, notwithstanding the fact that I understand the concerns of rural Alberta, but I would encourage all members to, in the end, support this bill because the process was thorough and we can move forward and address other legislation here in the brief time that we have remaining together before the festive season. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Excellent.